So David Sirota wrote a piece in the International Business Times about the trade deal titled, "How the Trans-Pacific Partnership Gives Corporations Special Legal Rights." And as I said, I read through this, and I'm going to give you some excerpts here, and then we're going to talk about some of the issues with the TPP. Now, it starts out saying, recently leaked drafts of the agreement of the TPP show that the pact includes some sort of ISDS provisions, investor-state dispute settlement. Now, this provision, written into most trade deals passed since NAFTA, those provisions will allow companies, according to leaked documents, to use secretive tribunals, international tribunals, to sue sovereign governments for damages when those companies pass public interest policies that threaten to cut into corporate profits. Now, as I said, that's one of the huge red flags when it comes to this trade deal. When it comes to TPP, when it comes to all of this, TTIP, all of these international trade deals, you run into a red flag when you have a corporation being able to sue a government. Now, could they sue governments before? Yes. But before ISDS, a corporation would have to lobby the government, their local government, in order to bring that government. So basically, it would have a government suing another government. With ISDS, that would bypass that, and now corporations without approval or knowledge of their home government would be able to sue another government if their profits or if something related to their bottom line was to be impacted by a local law being passed, for example, environmental regulations or labor laws. That would be disastrous. Now, it continues. Also, like past trade deals, the TPP is not expected to allow labor groups, environmental groups, or other nonprofit organizations to bring their own suits to that same tribunal. Another red flag. Now, of course, you would want these groups, nonprofits, labor unions especially, to be able to have that same power in order to help continue to enforce labor, environmental, and human rights laws. You would like to have them have the same authority. Now, the TPP, as we know, doesn't have that sort of protection. Now, would that make a difference if it was in there? I think it would. That would make a significant difference in the trust issue. Now, speaking of the trust issue, unfortunately, we don't know what's in it because they won't share the details. It's so closely guarded that we don't know if they even added this in, which would make it a significantly better trade deal. We just don't know right now. And that's part of the problem. Now, they give an example here. If a Vietnamese company with U.S. operations wanted to challenge an increase in the U.S. minimum wage, it could use ISDS. And Elizabeth Warren had actually wrote this in a Washington Post op-ed back in February. But if an American labor union believed Vietnam was allowing Vietnamese companies to pay slave wages in violation of trade commitments, the union would have to make its case in the Vietnamese courts. Now, ISDS, using an international tribunal, which of course is rumored to be able to use corporate lawyers, chosen by the corporation, who do you think that they would choose? That's why it makes it unfair. Corporations being able to use these tribunals versus labor unions that would have to sue the government itself over their laws. It would not be a fair, equal playing field, as President Obama had promised on this. Now, there are other things in here that are red flags and good examples of the kinds of lawsuits that would be brought through using ISDS. Now, Philip Morris had actually filed lawsuits against Australia and Uruguay, arguing that those nations' laws mandating health warnings on tobacco products are an expropriation of its property. It denies the company fair treatment and unduly cuts into its profits. And that's all that you would need to be able to sue another government. And as I said, even without ISDS, corporations can sue governments, but they have to lobby their own government to do so. TPP would expand their authority and give them more of a legal footing to be able to do it without their home government's consent or approval or even knowledge. That is a red flag to me. Now, also, a Swedish energy firm has used ISDS to target Germany's restrictions on coal-fired and nuclear power plants. And Eli Lilly is using the process to try and fight Canada's efforts to limit drug patents and reduce the price of medicine. Most recently, Canadian Finance Minister Joe Oliver said bank regulations passed in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis could be a violation of trade provisions under NAFTA, raising the prospect of the tribunal process could be used by banks to try and get the federal government to eliminate those laws, weaken regulation. As I said, there are so many red flags in here that I don't see how this could be, as Obama puts it, the most progressive trade deal in history. Now, the Obama administration, for its part, says the intent of the ISDS process is not to undermine public interest laws. No. Well, actually, the trade deal, he says, will have all kinds of labor and environmental and human rights protections. Okay. If that's true, then maybe we could have some details. You don't have to get into the very, very minute. Just give us an idea. Tell us about it. Show us. Give us some proof that we have these provisions. As I said, you don't have to go letter by letter and everything. But maybe you could show some people and they can tell you and summarize these kinds of protections. If they're in there, let us know. But that's the whole problem with this process, is that we don't know, and that they're being kept secret, and that Obama just says, don't worry, trust me. Well, you're a politician, and you got a lot of money from Wall Street and big corporations, as well as corporations being able to be inside the negotiation and influence the negotiation. There's no trust there. There's no trust here. And that's why there are some progressives out there that are not happy with this. It's not as if we oppose free trade just because we oppose free trade. It's that we oppose bad free trade deals, and we've seen enough through leaks to think that, hey, there are some serious issues here. If what we're seeing is right and it's in the final deal, then this could be a problem. Are there any ways in this deal to prevent these scenarios? And there are no details. There are no details to offset those fears. And then we are derided by the administration by even bringing up these potential problems. Like, hey, what about this? Oh, you guys are just being irrational. Trust me, it's the most progressive trade deal ever. If it is, prove it. Prove it. Before we give you authority to fast track it, which, by the way, Republicans don't want to give fast track authority to Obama simply because they don't want to give power to Obama, except for Boehner and McConnell, which are, of course, on board. And it kind of makes you think, if Boehner and McConnell are on board, and they're corporatists, remember, Boehner is the one who used to give out tobacco checks on the House floor. Well, that also is a red flag. When two of the biggest corporate whores in the House and Senate are all on board with this, and we're not getting any deals, of course we're not going to trust the bill. Of course we're not going to trust this agreement unless we see some particulars. And once again, that's the whole problem with not having transparency. Now, some people might argue, yeah, but no trade deal it has transparency. They're all conducted in secret. Well, maybe that's why we have so many shitty trade deals that have cost Americans jobs. Yes, it has helped the economy overall, but it's also helped widen income inequality and has really helped those making over $88,000 a year, according to reports. According to economic analysis, these bad trade deals have helped widen income inequality in America. A really, really large issue. But no, you guys are just being protectionists. No, you guys are just going against trade just because. Progressives. Labor unions, which are pushing heavily against this. Even with things like TAA, which they support. And TAA is not a new thing as well. But they have to reauthorize this, and Republicans, of course, are against that. They're against anything that protects workers. And the Democrats had to turn against it in the last vote, and now the Republicans, since they did that, they had to split the whole thing. And so now TAA is not expected to pass, or might have a very, very hard time in the Republican-controlled House and Senate. Where TPA had just passed at least a procedural vote in the Senate, and now it will come up to a full Senate vote, probably tomorrow.